I think I've pissed off somebody important. If we screw this guy with $1 million a month in legal fees, we get $500,000 a month. So let's just tie him up with this for 4 years. It was a unique experience. I would argue that an Eastern European jail has got to be one of the worst in the world, wouldn't you say? I have no idea who's in this place. I have no idea what they think of me. I have no idea if they're going to attempt to extort me because I'm known for having money, etc. But it is what it is, and God has a plan. I understand the battle I'm in. Maybe I should be offended. Maybe I should wake up and say they've taken all my money and they're taking me away from my children, they're wasting my life. Maybe I should care. I keep going back to the Matrix, but I'm going to allow myself that privilege because they put me in jail yesterday. These clowns. But they attack masculinity on every level and say every single thing about it is bad until they need you to die in a war or run into a burning building, or they need 33 big guys to bust in my door. Then they need masculinity. But that is reassuring when you're in jail. Look, I'm still the center of their universe. They're still obsessed with me. I'm still the most important man in their lives. There is a war against free thought. There is a war against the basic tenets of masculinity. They're out to destroy anybody who thinks for themselves or has any semblance of manhood about him. If they get their teeth into you, sir, and they go through every phone call you've ever had, every text message you've ever sent, everywhere you've ever been, they will find crimes and your indictment will make you look like the Antichrist. Fact. But there were times the guards rushed into my room and did a complete sweep for anything that I could kill myself with. I was like, guys, I would never kill myself. Have you not seen my podcast?
Hi, Shaun.
Man, I've just woke up and seen the news. Can you believe it? Poor guys.
This is how crazy this has got.
What do I do if you get detained? If the worst case scenario happens and you get detained.
I'm going to contact Tate's camp now before we have the boarding thing goes up, so I'll get back to you shortly.
Okay. Right,
Love you, bye.
I have been inundated with people asking, get the Tate brothers on to tell their prison stories in depth, man. We are fundamentally a prison channel that went down the rabbit hole of the Matrix with David Icke. So viewers, you're in for an absolute treat. But the Matrix has revealed itself on the way here. As many of you know, Michael Francis was supposed to be here with us today. 2 days before we schedule a sit down with Andrew, he gets his passport confiscated by the American authorities. Can you believe it? And they say the Matrix doesn't exist. Come on now. It's quite obvious. Before we get into the prison stuff and the rest of the stories, huge thank you first to Andrew, because it was only yesterday, he got put back inside for a day.
Yeah.
We'd already booked to come out. We were like, what is going on? And he must be hectic right now. And he's kindly come down here, spent this time with us. So hugely appreciate it, man. Thank you.
No, thank you for having me. Yeah, I got out of jail 21 hours ago on my second visit. And very interesting what you say about Michael. I'm praying for him because anyone who believes the Matrix doesn't exist just simply hasn't got high enough yet. I often compare it to, but it's like a fishbowl, right? You have people living inside of the fish tank and they're swimming around talking about how free they are. And they say, I can see in all directions and I don't see any walls and I'm free. And I'm sure that's true unless you try and swim too far. And then you're going to start bouncing up against glass walls and you're going to realize that there are control mechanisms that are designed to prevent people from learning too much or saying too much or having too much unless you are controlled to some degree. And I guess that's a simple way of explaining it, the Matrix as a whole. I actually was having this conversation with Tristan the other day that I feel like this whole generation of people becoming famous on their own merit and on their own back. I say generation, it's probably only about 6, 7 years old that a podcaster or somebody can come along and garner international attention without needing a gatekeeper as such. I know you're still on YouTube, but YouTube to a degree is still a gatekeeper. You said about David, David's been banned. I've been banned. I hope you survive for as long as possible, my friend.
I was banned twice after covering that story.
Well, there you go. So if you work in traditional entertainment industries, there's a gatekeeper. There's a manager or a producer or a director or a record label or a sports team or whatever. There's somebody who you've signed that contract with who will prevent you from doing things or saying things they don't want you to say. Otherwise, it's all over. There's a gatekeeper. And now we've entered a generation, or we've entered a time where people can come along, become famous on their own back, of their own merit, especially with Rumble and X, these other platforms. You can avoid gatekeepers. And that is very aggravating to the people who only want certain ideas purported. So their answer to that is lawfare. Their answer to that is the legal system. They say, okay, well, this person's talking too much and there's no manager we can call to make sure he shuts up. Let's try and bribe him with some money. Let's try and get him a sponsorship contract. Let's get him under someone's heel. If the person declines such a sponsorship contract, then the answer after that is to try and shut you up, ban you everywhere. And if that fails, the only move they have left is to put you in jail. And what they'll do is they'll go to the legal system, they'll assign a prosecutor, and they'll say, do whatever it takes to ruin this person's life. Walter, and they believe the legal system is fair, and they believe that everything you're told in the news, and that there's no reason for the Matrix to exist. Why would it exist? Why would there be this big collusion to try and prevent certain ideas released to the public? I've never experienced any of these things. Well, that's because you're being a good little fish. You're inside of the bowl. If you try and go too far, you'll start bumping up against the glass wall, and the glass wall can be your social media accounts, it can be your bank accounts, it can be your freedom to live and breathe, because they will throw you in a cell. And I guess, perhaps I don't want to be too forgiving. I'm often called too nice. I don't even know this. I'm called too nice far too often. But I sit and I analyze, and you have to understand that although they're destroying my life, I don't take it so personally, because I very much understand why they're doing it. And I understand the enemy I have chosen. I feel like the best thing I can be in this situation is to not be emotional about what's happening to me. Because if I'm emotional, I don't think it allows me to think rationally. And I look at it very simply, and I ask the people at home who don't believe in the Matrix, think of it this simply. If you owned a company and you had members of staff, and you wanted your members of staff to act in a certain way, and you had a couple members of staff who continually defied your orders and wouldn't do as you told them or asked them to do, even though what you need them to do is to the best interests of the company as a whole. They're coming along and acting different than you want them to act, and it's damaging your bottom line. You would fire them. Well, you can think of the world as a company, and they have decided that certain ideas are good for them. I disagree. They've decided that certain moral standings and geopolitical decisions are good for them, and of course I disagree. And I'm the bad employee. And unfortunately for them, people are listening to me talk. So now I'm inspiring a little rebellion around the water cooler on the lunch break. And they've thought, well, we have to stop this. And they've come along and are using the tools they have at their disposal. And first they're going to slander you and cancel you everywhere and try their very best to convince the world you're a bad person. And if that fails, they will throw you in jail. And I understand why they're doing what they're doing. I'm not personally offended, if that makes sense. I understand the battle I'm in. Maybe I should be offended. Maybe I should wake up and say they've taken all my money and they're taking me away from my children. They're wasting my life. Maybe I should care. But when they come to arrest me, I'm very much like, well, this is the game we play. It's like losing a character, and it's like losing a little piece in checkers. You took my piece. Like that's the game. And perhaps I'm too rational about it. But anybody at home who doesn't understand that it's really that simple, that if you owned a company, you wouldn't allow bad employees to inspire a rebellion against the company. And the governments don't allow individuals to speak too much truth about how evil these governments are. Now, the problem with all of this is that I'm on the right side of history and I'm right and they're wrong and they're genuinely evil. That's the problem with all of it. The problem with all of it is I'm actually the good guy. But they don't see it that way. They see themselves as the good guy. I am the bad guy because I will not wear a dress. And therefore, I must pay the price.
Yeah, it's an inversion. Let's get back to the Matrix then. Let's go into the prison stuff first. So on the day of your arrest, the first arrest, not yesterday, what were you looking forward to the most in your life? What were your plans?
I had a flight booked for that day. I had a jet on the runway, fully fueled. I was intending on flying back to Dubai. I only came to Europe for 4 days. I came to London to have a conversation with Piers Morgan. And then I stopped in Prague, and then I stopped in Vienna. And then from Vienna, do I fly directly to Dubai? Because I intend on being in Dubai for the next 3 or 4 months. But then I decided to repack my suitcase. I thought, I've had the same clothes for a while, and I'm filmed everywhere I go. It's all on TikTok. I should probably change. So I flew and I landed here at 7 p.m. and my intention was to take off at 10 a.m. I landed, I packed my bag, I went to bed, and then at 5 a.m., friends came to visit me, and that was the beginning of a saga which is going on for 2 years now. I've not left this country. I've only recently been able to leave this city. I've been under some form of arrest for 422 days, I believe.
Let's suspend that moment, because when the SWAT team came for me, I had all these plans. We were going to move to California, in Arizona, all this stuff. Door smashes down, they open up, and it's like time slows down and everything goes upside down.
Yeah.
Did something like that happen for you?
I'll be honest with you. The first emotion I felt was relief, because when I heard the door getting busted in, I grabbed a machete near my bed, and I thought it was the other guys. I thought it was the other team of enemies, because anybody who reaches a certain echelon of life, you have two enemies. You have the law and you have the other team, right? They're opposite teams. You're in a web and there's two spiders. So I thought it was the Albanians or something. So when I first saw police, for a fraction of a second, I was like, oh, thank God it's only the cops. No big deal. So they started waving guns around and being overly aggressive. And I was like, all right, okay, calm down. What's this all about? And they weren't very forthcoming. The first word the police officer said to me is, "Where is your Bugatti?" First word. It's like, why do you care where my Bugatti is? Because they wanted to seize the Bugatti. Almost as if this whole thing was financially motivated, which would be pretty interesting. I was actually speaking to one of my friends the other day. I was saying this to somebody. I was saying, I wonder if governments are astute enough to look at somebody with a bunch of money and think, you know what? You know who will definitely not use any kind of international loopholes or international business banking or be clever with their accounting? You know who will just pay their 50% tax on time? Their lawyers. If we screw this guy with $1 million a month in legal fees, we get $500,000 a month. So let's just tie him up with this shit for 4 years. I wonder if they actually think that way. We can get PC Plod and give him, he's on 33 grand a year. We can make him file some papers and mess with this guy, and we can get $500,000 a month out of this dude. And they don't care whether you're guilty, innocent. They're uninterested. I don't know if they ever operate that way or think of it that way, but I think it literally can come down to that.
Okay, in America, it's called civil asset forfeiture laws, and it's got to the point now where if kids are driving around their parents' cars and there's in the car, they keep the vehicle. It's all about seizing people's assets.
Wow.
Yeah, you got jacked.
And this is the thing. Then you go deeper down the rabbit hole of the Matrix, because especially people inside of that fish tank, they don't understand that you don't own anything. I keep saying this to people. The number of people who come to me and say, Andrew, why are you fighting this fight? Why don't you just give up? As if I'm some kind of coward, as if that was ever an option for me. I'm sure for the average person that would be an option, but the average person wouldn't end up where I am. So no, I don't give up and I don't quit and I'm stubborn and you're gonna have to kill me because that's who I am. But the average person's like, if I had your money, I'd just buy a few houses around the world and I'd just go on holiday and sit on the beach, showing that their mind is so empty. Well, all you're basically doing is telling me why you'll never have my money, because you're an empty vessel. If you think sand and a cocktail is all it takes for happiness and fulfillment as opposed to struggle and war, well, then you don't deserve riches. But this idea of having a few houses around the world, you don't own those houses. They are not yours. You can get any piece of paper you want saying you own that house. Piss off the government and you will see how quickly you lose that house and everything in it. All they have to do is assign PC Plod on his $33,000 a year to file a paper to go to some judge, along with all the other papers that judge has that day. They don't have time to look into any of it. They're just like, oh, okay, stamp. Before you know it, they turn up with guns and they take it off you. You don't own anything you can't defend, and you can't defend yourself against the government. You don't own anything. And once you've had your house raided enough times, as I have, you learn you don't own anything in any country. The whole thing, the whole idea of ownership in and of itself is a scam, which makes you even less content with these governments. It makes you want to live under them even less because all the things they promise you, property rights and you can have a car and we can give you safety. All that goes out the window when you've stolen my cars and stolen my house and turned up with guns and waved shotguns in my face. So why am I supposed to believe the government for anything anymore? So you don't even own anything. Whole thing's a scam.
Let's go to after the guns. My ride to the cop shop, the cop had aviator sunglasses on, chewing tobacco, 98 KUPD on the radio.
Nice.
What was your ride to the cop shop like?
Yeah, so when they came in the house, I was relieved it was the police. They tried to rough me up a little bit, and I was very calm. I said, guys, there's no need to do this part. I'm not resisting in any regard. I mean, there's about 33 of you. 32? Maybe. But 33? I'll let you have it. So,
it's an Illuminati number.
Bro, yeah. So they sat me on the couch. They asked where my Bugatti was repeatedly. Where's the Bugatti? Where's the Bugatti? Because the Bugatti, I actually realized, now I understand this is all a Matrix attack, is a symbol of my wealth. This was all done to me to damage my influence. And the Bugatti was viral at the time. What color is your Bugatti? I have this fast car. So they were desperate to take this symbol of resilience to show the world, he doesn't have one either. My Bugatti wasn't at the house. They never actually took that Bugatti. But they were desperate to get it. They kept almost begging for it, this female officer. I was like, why are you begging for my car? Can you calm down? What are you doing in my house? And they said, we have to wait for your lawyer to get here. It was very early in the morning. We waited for my lawyer to arrive, and they began a house search. My house search was 13 or 14 hours of searching the house. The whole time I had to just sit on the couch and just wait. So they went through the entire house.
For 13 hours?
For 13 hours, they were going through my entire house.
You just sat there?
Yeah. I mean, when I went piss, they'd follow me, watch me go piss.
Peter gazing.
Peter gazing. You know the great thing about it? When they went to Peter gaze me, I was like, I'm not going to hide. I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to put it right in your face. You want to watch me piss, sir? Here it is. Now you feel inadequate on top of everything else. I just did it right in front of him. F you. Shouldn't be falling into the bathroom. Pervs. So they followed me to the bathroom, and then they found my safe, which they couldn't open. So they got me from the couch, and they come and said, open the safe. I said, no, I'm not going to open it. And they said, well, you're going to jail. So it doesn't matter if it takes 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. We're going to get in that safe, and we're going to destroy your house while we do it. Once again, you don't own anything. Anything you cannot defend, you don't own. I said to Tristan, do we open it? And Tristan goes, no. And I was like, but they're just going to get in anyway, and they're going to cause crazy damage. And then my brain started to tick, and I thought, they'll probably use this as an excuse to keep me in jail longer. We're not in the safe yet. We're not in the safe yet. That's where the evidence is. And they'll just delay it. So I open the safe, and they steal all my diamond watches and steal all my gold and steal all my cash, take everything off me. Then they got my phones. Tell me your phone password. Open your phones. But I was very stressed, and I couldn't remember the password. I said, I'm very stressed. I'm suffering from anxiety because you got so many guns in here, and I don't remember. I'm sorry. And after the house search, they put me in a transit van surrounded by armed guards. And once we got into the van and the cameras were away, to be fair, the police were pretty not nice to me, but I said to them, I think I've pissed off somebody important. I said that. And the guy driving said, I think so. That was his answer. So I think they kind of knew something wasn't right about all of this garbage. I was taken, I was mugshotted, I was fingerprinted, and then I was thrown in jail.
Strip search?
No strip search. They just searched me head to toe. They patted me down, etc. They all knew who I was. Everybody knew exactly who I was. So like, what are you doing here? I was like, my friend, I wish I knew what I was doing here. Because I was arrested on the 29th of December. So because of Christmas and in between Christmas and New Year, etc., there was no translators working. So the papers I was giving for my arrest were in Romanian. And I didn't even have an English translation of why I was in jail for 2 weeks. I didn't know. I kept getting given Romanian pieces of paper. I don't speak Romanian. All I saw was human trafficking. And I was like, this is absolutely insane. Human trafficking who? I found out later exactly how insane the whole case is. But I was thrown in a jail cell. Yeah.
So the detention facility, when you first went in, what was that like?
So the Romanian detention facilities were built during communism. And Romania is one of the poorest countries in Europe. And I don't think any politician could run and win an election based on the fact that he wants to upgrade the prisons, considering that the roads are damaged and the hospitals have problems and the pensions can't be paid. I don't think you're going to win an election based on prison refurbishment. So they have very little interest. The European Union as a whole has come along with standards which they're imploring all European nations to meet. But Romania, I think, and this can be looked up, I think Cheto has fined them. I think they get fined millions and millions of euros a year because they simply can't and don't meet the standards. The people were very nice to me, and I want to make this clear. All of the prison guards and the police officers the whole way through were very nice to me, and I think they knew what was happening. None of them for a second thought I was a bad person. They were very much like, sorry, bro, I'm just doing my job. You've annoyed somebody. I don't know who. And they were all very nice to me. But when I was put in that prison, it was a unique experience. I would argue that an Eastern European jail has got to be one of the worst in the world, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. Did you start out in holding cells before you were housed properly?
No. So you get 6 months in this detention center. And at the end of 6 months, if you're still being held, you get moved to the large jail. But the large jail is much better from my understanding, because the large jail, you get to leave your cell and there's like a tailor shop and a gym. And it's more like not community, but you have a exercise yard, and it's more like a traditional jail. These holding cells are exactly that. They are holding rooms. And I was in a room maybe 2 or 3 times larger than this table, perhaps. 24-hour-a-day lockdown. I didn't go anywhere. I wasn't allowed out. There was no gym. There was nothing. I could take 3 steps in either direction for 93 days. And I was stuck in there. The window was about the size of my hand. And there was a tiny TV in the corner, which I understand was a European Union, some regulation they had to fill, but it was in Romanian and I couldn't understand it. And I was stuck in this darkened room for 93 days.
On the way to that room, were the other prisoners watching you come in?
Everyone started saying Frati Tate, which means brothers Tate brothers.
Right.
Because they heard that we were there. So it was like, Frati Tate, everyone's talking about it. And the guards are even saying to us, this is crazy. And I looked at the guard and I said, this is bullshit. I'll be out soon, right? And he kind of looked at me and he went, and I could see in his eyes he knew that I wasn't going to be out anytime soon. And that worried me a little bit. But I thought at first, this can't last long. If I knew I was going to be in there for 93 days, I might have had if I was capable of having a mental breakdown, which I'm not, I would have had one. Luckily, I'm incapable because I don't operate within that realm. I don't believe in things that can take away power from me. I don't have panic attacks. I don't have anxiety. None of those things, they're not inside of my software. But when I first went to jail, I thought I'd only be there for a few days. So I was like, okay, this sucks. But it's only a couple of days. Not going to be long, right? And you're looking for reassurance. I'm asking the guards. I'm asking the other prisoners. I'm like, they picked me up on some garbage. Why am I in here? And then you speak to a prisoner. He's like, I got picked up on garbage. It's like, what did you do? He goes, well, I bought and sold crypto, but they don't understand it. They don't get it. And they thought it was money laundering and they've just thrown me in jail. I was like, well, how long have you been here? He goes, 2 years. I was like, okay, that's not good. Then I spoke to another guy, 3 years. This is all pre-trial. 19 months, 16 months. And I was like, has anyone been to court? They're like, oh, no. Trial takes a long time in Romania. It takes 4 or 5 years. They're busy. So I was like, you're all just sitting here? They're like, yeah. So it was over time it started to seep in. And after my first night in jail, I had to go to a judge the next day to decide whether I'd be released in 24 hours, as I just was recently, or if I'd be held for 30 days. And when I got to court, my lawyer, who I trust absolutely and I believe is the best lawyer in Romania, my lawyer said, I've seen the file, I've read the file. You're going home. I was like, really? He goes, yes, they are saying that you told your friends how to do TikTok and you stole money from the TikTok accounts and that it's human by coercion. And that's why they've taken all your cars and all your gold, because that's all made from TikTok, and they've stolen everything. But don't worry, we're going to clear this up. You're going home today. And I don't understand Romanian, but my lawyer gave a very impassioned speech to the judge. And I could tell the passion in his voice. And he was 100% confident. And the judge looked very receptive. She looked very receptive. She was like, okay, makes sense, makes sense, makes sense. The judge went to deliberate for about an hour, and I was sitting with my lawyer talking about how it's crazy they could even arrest me on something so silly. And we're talking about it. And about half an hour into this conversation, because I'm a professional, I said to my lawyer, but what happens if I do go to jail? And he goes, you won't. I was like, but what happens if I do? He goes, well, if you do, there'll be an appeal process, and after 30 days, you'll go to court again. And for some reason, when he said that, I knew. It's like deja vu. It was in my mind. I could see it. As soon as he said it, I looked at Tristan and I said, we're going to jail. He goes, no, we're not. I said, Tristan, we're going to jail. Judge came back out, sat down, 30 days preventive detention, boom, walks off. Couldn't believe it. Put me back in handcuffs and dragged me back to jail.
Yeah, there's like the eternal hope of the newly incarcerated, and it gets punctured, doesn't it? And once you accept that, you just get on with it.
Yeah, I think it gets worse. I think the first few days when you're trying to work everything out, you still have hope in the system to some degree. And once you realize the truth of it all, it's almost like a month in, you're like, okay, I'm going to be here for a very long time. And that's when you get truly almost disheartened. I think I felt worse about a month in. The beginning wasn't so bad. And the end, because of Ramadan, I felt empowered and it wasn't so bad. But in the middle, about a month and a half in is when it was really bad. And the story of my New Year's Eve is famous because I was arrested on the 29th and I remember spending New Year's Eve listening to the Lost Ketchup song. There was a tiny little party going on for the guards. One of the guards used to say something to me, which kind of made me feel better. He'd say, how are you? I said, well, I'm still in jail. He goes, brother, one day you'll be free. I've been in jail for 20 years because he works there. So I was like, maybe. Yeah, maybe it's not all bad. Maybe I'll get out one day and I get to go back on my private jet. Maybe. Turns out I get to come out, but I don't get to go anywhere. But him and the other colleagues were having a little party and they were listening to the Lost Ketchup song on New Year's Eve. And I remember sitting in that room by myself in the dark. And New Year's came around and the fireworks went off and I could see them through the small window and I could hear everybody cheering. And I was kind of amused by the fact that when the clock struck 12, nothing at all happened. Like nothing happened. It's like, Happy New Year. And then you kind of look around your room, there's no one celebrating. Even the cockroaches on my ceiling didn't move. They were uninterested in the New Year celebration. It's just like, yeah. So it was, but I didn't feel bad then. I still felt like this was some sort of misunderstanding. I need to speak to the American embassy. We have an appeal coming up. The judge just put me in jail because it was the 29th of December and she's busy. Let me get to the appeal. Let's get New Year's out of the way. Let me speak to the embassy. Let me get my papers in English. Let me explain this is garbage and I'll be out. And as each one of those things got snatched from me, about a month and a half in, I realized, okay, I'm in trouble.
Going back to when you first went in, I mean, I'd watched Shawshank Redemption, so I was myself, and then I go in and all these massive tattooed guys are staring at me through the plexiglass, fresh meat.
Yeah.
With the guys shouting, Tate brothers, Tate brothers, Tate brothers. That must have really boosted your spirits, because did you watch Shawshank, for example?
I've seen it, yeah.
Did you have a preconceived notion of what you were getting into, banged up abroad style?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because Putin recently said about the war in Ukraine, he said, growing up on the streets of Leningrad taught me that if a fight is inevitable, you must hit first. And my approach to violence my entire life has been one of absolute avoidance. I'm not a violent person and I don't like violence, but I understand that violence exists in the world and I've always been okay at it. I'm pretty good at it. And to me, it's almost like the rain. I don't want it to rain, but if it rains, you get wet. And my brother and I kind of looked at each other because we can speak without speaking because we lived together our whole lives. And as we were taken into the cell, as we were taken into the jail, from the van, we gave each other a glance and a nod. And that was basically hit first. That was all it meant. We're going to walk in there and we're going to hold our heads high. We're going to treat people with respect. We're going to be a very good person and nice and polite and say please and sorry and thank you. But if some idiot really wants it, then you're going to hit him first. But I didn't feel like it was up to me. It's almost like, is it going to rain? Is it going to snow? I'll deal with it if it comes, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I felt a twinge of nerves, but not fear. It was more like pre-fight nerves, like I have no idea who's in this place. I have no idea what they think of me. I have no idea if they're going to attempt to extort me because I'm known for having money, etc. But it is what it is, and God has a plan. And if I win or lose whatever encounter I enter, once again, it's God's plan. Perhaps I'll die in here, but it is what it is. The jail cell doors were solid metal. There was only a very tiny window, so I couldn't see anything but the eyes of the other prisoners. So I couldn't really get a gauge on them. And then I was thrown in my cell. So I didn't engage with any of them for the first few days.
Do you remember the very first conversation you had with a prisoner?
Yes. The very first conversation I had with a prisoner was asking how long he'd been there and what for. And I soon came to realize, and I'm sure this is true in most countries which are poor, that there isn't much of a divide between the criminal justice system and the mental health system. In the West, we try our best to put a divide in the two. Even if you do bad actions, if you're mentally ill, you'll be treated differently. Whereas in countries like this, you just go to jail. So I started to learn over time that a lot of the people in there were mentally ill or mentally weak. You know what's kind of funny? You imagine the prisoners in jail to be these big psychopathic hardened killers, and some of them are. But a lot of the people, even the ones who commit murder, are actually just emotionally weak people who can't control their temper. They will get angry too fast and kill someone. They'll also cry too easy. They'll also be very sad. They'll also mope around. You'll see a killer and you imagine him to walk like a predator. A lot of the killers walked like they were just depressed and sad. And I was like, well, looks like he's having a hard time. Why is he here? Oh, he killed 4 people. You're like, oh, well, okay. I don't feel sorry for him anymore. But like, it's strange how it's just mentally weak, which ties back into the Matrix, by the way. It ties back into all of the things I teach, because they say I'm dangerous for teaching masculine qualities. But the traditional masculine quality is stoicism, the ability to ignore how you feel and act how you're supposed to act, irregardless of your feelings. Women get mad and scream. Women act like how they feel. A man has to feel a certain way and act differently, or he can't compete in the world. He can't outcompete other men. So the men who can't do that are the ones who end up in jail. So when the feminists and the Matrix is saying men need to act out their feelings and be more sensitive, well, if we act out our feelings, guess what happens? People also get killed because we get mad. So it's not a good thing. So I was actually surprised by the people who I saw who did the most heinous crimes weren't psychopathic and calculated. They seemed more like beaten down by life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Disadvantaged. A lot of them traumatized. A lot of them state raised.
Yeah.
Where I was at, a third of them couldn't even read or write. And half my friends were ex-soldiers, come back from wars, PTSD, didn't get any help from the government, bam, into the prison system.
Yep. And isn't that the saddest possible route? Because I keep going back to the Matrix, but I'm going to allow myself that privilege because they put me in jail yesterday. These clowns. But they attack masculinity on every level and say every single thing about it is bad until they need you to die in a war. 33 big guys to bust in my door. Then they need masculinity. So they'll send you off to go die for a war you don't even truly understand. You don't even know why you're there. I'm sure they've told you why you're there, but you don't know why you're actually there. And you're going to risk life and limb. And if you survive and come back with any kind of mental trauma and then don't act exactly how they want you to act as a good tax-paying slave, they just throw you in jail without remorse.
Meanwhile, George Bush and Dick Cheney have made billions.
Of course. They've laundered all the money. So the whole thing is truly disgusting. And yeah, I'm sure that's one of the saddest paths, but it's also a path I can very easily see how people will end up in jail after coming back with PTSD from war. Their wife's someone else the last 6 years. They come back expecting to come home to a happy family. She's been with Tom, Dick, and Harry. And they have PTSD and they can't pay their bills. Of course they're going to end up doing something stupid. And they're going to end up in the prison system. And yeah, they're going to catch a murder charge or something else. And they're not psychopathic killers. They're sad. The people in jail who actually seem like the most calculated were a lot of the financial criminals. They're sharp, mentally at least. But also in a Romanian jail, and like I said, this is not insult to Romania. I'm sure this is the same in most poorer countries. There was a lot of simply mental health issues. There was a lot of people who were simply mentally ill. And they weren't separated in any way. So you had people who would just bang their head on the door until they'd bleed everywhere, and an ambulance would have to come. and they'd get dragged out the cell unconscious or whatever, patched up, thrown back in. 3 days later, they'd bang their head on the door. So I was living in a mental asylum. Part of the experience was it. There were a lot when I was in there. I can't say exactly how many, but there were times the guards rushed into my room and did a complete sweep for anything that I could kill myself with. I was like, guys, I would never kill myself. Have you not seen my podcast? And they're like, no, Tate, we got to take everything. They took my little bottle of Tabasco because it was made of glass. They took my exercise band. Took my bed sheets, took my shoelaces, and your room just gets stripped of any type of comfort whatsoever. So, yeah, it was interesting.
Going back to your cell, how did you use the toilet? Was the little sink combination toilet in there? How did you shower?
Yeah, interesting. So we had a very efficient combination in the corner. We had a little sink, and then we also had a toilet, which was effectively a hole in the ground. There was no toilet of any kind. It was a hole in the ground. And there was a shower above the hole in the ground. And from what I could deduce, all the holes in the ground from all the cells in a row were on the same large sewage pipe. Oh. So there was all these holes in the ground going to the same large sewage pipe. But the real problem was that the shower was above this hole in the ground. So using the toilet was inconvenient. But the biggest problem is that if you went to have a hot shower, and the water was hot, which actually surprised me, we had hot water, it would stink out because it would go down to this sewage pipe and sewage steam would come out and steam out the room. So you couldn't really have a hot shower without suffering 3 hours of sewage smell inside of your cell. So it was a unique experience of knowing there was hot water, but being forced to use the cold to avoid the stench.
What was the stench like?
Yeah, it was, I only found out once and I decided to have cold showers from then on out. And it was January in Bucharest, so it was minus. It was very cold outside. And I'll be honest, after about 2 weeks, I just thought, I'll just stink. I'll just have one shower every couple of weeks. F*** 'em. If you don't like how I smell, let me go. Because I'm freezing. I'm either freezing to death in my bed, shivering, or my room stinks. So that was the kind of combination in the corner. And then we had bunk beds. The mattresses were piss-stained foam, perhaps an inch, literally so thin. And we had a blanket. And that was the cell. We had a tiny TV in the corner. About this big.
Did you have toilet paper rations? Because when we ran out, we had to use the Financial Times.
Yeah, they didn't ration our toilet paper. No.
With a bang, window down, yelling out money and a thing. Ayy, came back with a bang, window down, yelling out money and a thing. Ayy, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal, I begin to the bag. Ayy. Got the foot on the gas.
I think my brother and I might have been the richest people ever to be in a Romanian jail because you have a commissary limit and you have a commissary spend. And obviously we were maxing out our spend.
What was the weekly limit?
I think you were allowed €500 a month. But between us both, that's €1,000 a month in our cell by the time we were together. And if you're only buying cheap things, I mean, it's quite a lot. I might be wrong. It might be €500 every 2 weeks. So we might have had €2,000 a month. But most people in there were in there with no hope, no money on the commissary. No one's sending them money, nothing. They're living on the free jail food and they're begging for cigarettes. Whereas my brother and I had unlimited cigarettes, unlimited toilet paper, unlimited bottles of water, unlimited. We had all these things. The problem was that we could only buy food from this approved list. And this store, whatever store they found, must have literally been the store around the corner because they sold no protein, no meat, nothing of substance. You could just buy Oreos, cookies, toilet paper, water, Coca-Cola, junk. You could only buy junk food, which was quite frustrating because you buy Oreos and then you sit in jail and you think, I'm not going to eat too many Oreos because I don't want to get out of shape in this place. And then you're just staring at the Oreos for 33 whole minutes, which of course is 10 hours in jail. And you end up just eating 4 packs of Oreos a day. So it was annoying me. I couldn't get any real food. And I had to live off the prison system food or eat junk food effectively.
So if you had a lot of commissary then, that makes you a target because you've got to break bread to your mates. But if you break too much bread, the moochies are going to be lined up at your cell trying to get everything you've got.
Yep.
How did you balance that?
I really do believe that 99% of people, if you treat them with respect, will give you respect back. I really believe that. Of course, there are the oddballs, and there's some people who are simply broken. And there's some people which are quicker to anger than others. But I feel like if you are pretty respectful to most people, you'll be okay. And I feel like in general, jail is just a condensed version of life for a man. I feel like it's just hyper condensed. If you get angry in traffic, you wouldn't be able to survive jail. You get angry quicker. People get angry quicker. You have to be more polite. You have to be more quiet sometimes. You have to be more prepared for a fight, even though you don't want to have one. Everything's just turned up a notch. That's how it is. And I was very giving and nice to people, but I also sometimes simply said no. And I felt like if I explain myself, it's weakness. So for the same reason, I don't like to explain myself in my everyday life. And I'll segue and say this. A lot of people think I'm some rich kid. I think a lot of the people even in the jail thought I was some rich kid. They're like, the Tate brothers, they're rich guys. They didn't realize that my brother and I are the opposite of rich kids. We're poor people with a lot of money. We're from the streets. We're from the absolute bottom. We grew up around the knife crime and the robberies, and we've been arrested and all this garbage before. So if they expected us to be pushovers or weaklings, they learned very quickly that's not the case. And if somebody said, can I have cigarettes? Sometimes I would say, sure. Can I have cigarettes? No, sorry. I'm not going to say no because I'm running out and I need to do more, because that's weakness. For the same reason, in my relationship, I don't like explaining myself to my girlfriend. Don't do that. Why? Because I said no. I'm not going to sit here and talk till why, because I said no. That's the answer, no. I won't explain myself to my children. I won't explain myself to my staff. Do this. Okay. I don't sit there and give reasons for shit. That's a habit I learned from my dad. It offends me. I don't have to give my reasons. So if a guy came up and said, oh, can I have this? No, sorry. And then I just stand there and say, do something. Are you going to do something about it? I'm standing right here. And what can he say? If I give him a bunch of excuses, then he could say, oh, brother, please. If I just say no, sorry, then it's either a fight or it's not. And it looks like they didn't want to fight. So
were you ever tempted to hustle with your commentary, do double bubble, that kind of thing?
I was trying to get gym time. The first week, I couldn't go to the gym. So I was like, who do I need to give cigarettes to go to the gym? And it took me a full week to realize there is no gym. There is nowhere to go. I'm not leaving this room, which kind of upset me because I bought extra cigarettes. You know, you're like, okay, cigarettes are the currency. So let me buy as many cigarettes as possible and see if I can get like gym time or something. But no, there was nowhere to go. There was nothing to do. There was not much I could do with it besides just be generous. And I was being as generous as I could because that's who I am as a person anyway. A couple people, I believe, tried to take the piss, and I just made it very clear to them, you shouldn't have done that. No, I'm not giving you anything anymore.
Could you be more specific? How did they try and take the piss?
Well, I think when you go to Romanian jail and you've been there for a long time and you've been trying to get cigarettes out of people for years, and most of them never have cigarettes, and then rich foreigners come and you ask for a cigarette and you get a pack. And then you've been around the system long enough, perhaps, to understand that eventually we will leave. And they're never going to leave. I guess they kind of view it as make hay while the sun shines. So they just start smoking a pack in an hour and then ask for another pack. So where's the last ones? Like, I smoked them all. I know you didn't. He goes, look, I smoked them all. And then I'd give him another pack of cigarettes and observe and watch him literally chain smoke them all. He thinks he can get unlimited cigarettes for this period of time. Like his grace has come. For these few months, cigarettes are free. So, and eventually I'd say, no, my friend. If I give you cigarettes, you're going to have to make them last. I'm not giving you any more. And I like to think that firm line can be held in most things in life. I guess if I were to ask myself why I acted that way in jail, just like I alluded to earlier, is how I act in life. If I say to my girlfriend, no, and she goes, well, I'm going to do it anyway. Well, I've said no. I'm going to do it anyway. Then we're going to break up. If I say to a man no, and he makes a big deal of it, then he can fight me. Like, it is what it is. The answer is no, and I'm not going to tell you why. I just said no. I'm a full-grown man. The answer is no, and it's mine. It's mine. My brother had a saying in jail, which was, for some reason, kept making me laugh. Things are funny in jail that aren't funny on the outside, but it was funny. He'd slick his hair back. He'd get a cigarette. He'd smoke it and goes, let him try. Because I said to him about some guy kept asking for cigarettes. He goes, let him try. I'm a tough guy. I was like, what does that mean? He goes, you know, like the movies. I'm a fucking tough guy, like the movies. I'll body slam him. I'm a fucking tough guy. For some reason, it was funny. But I guess that's just our attitude. We weren't there to be bullied by anybody. And very quickly, people treated us with respect. And I was very respectful to people, but also there was times I bumped into a guy in the hallway. And from my understanding, he was in jail for beating someone with a hammer. Some old man with a hammer, he beat him to death or something. And I bumped into him and I said sorry, and he didn't reply. And the guards were walking us. I said, brother, I said sorry to you. And he goes, oh, sorry. I made a killer apologize to me. Now, why did I do that? Because I said sorry to you, and you just ignored me. Now, I have no idea. He might have gone back to his cell and say, I bumped into Tate. He said sorry. The fact I made him apologize to me, you don't know how the repercussions spread in a place like jail. That might have been enough for him to go, you know what, those Tate brothers, you don't know. And I don't think I was being unfair. I wasn't being aggressive. I wasn't trying to start a fight. But he bumped into me effectively. In fact, I didn't even do anything wrong. He bumped into me, and I said sorry. So you better say it back, sir. And I feel like if you approach life that way, you'll be okay.
Yeah, people don't understand how combustible it is. Like, you could be walking past someone, they say, what are you looking at? Looking at nothing. You calling me nothing?
Yeah.
Next thing, bam.
And that's one thing that actually, I think prisons, of course, I'm sure I know, prisons are different all around the world. And I feel like an American jail, perhaps in many ways, would be more violent than a Romanian jail. It didn't feel violent. It felt sad. I don't know how to explain it. It didn't feel like a violent place. There was the capability of many to be violent, and there certainly was tinges of violence in the air sometimes. But it felt sad. That's how it felt. I imagine an American jail will be different because I think to even be violent requires a degree. It's a high energy expenditure. If you're with your friends and you're with your gang and you're out on the yard and you're talking and you're laughing and there's enough in you. But if you're just locked in a room all day, every day in the dark with the roaches and you get to bump past a prisoner for a few seconds every 4 days, like, are you really going to use that chance to get the kicked at you by guards? Really? Everyone was depressed. Everyone was chronically depressed. So I felt like in a lot of ways that kept a lot of the violence under control, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How many days did it take for you to settle down into?
That's a very good question. Because now I think about it. And when I just went back yesterday, it was probably my worst day in jail I've ever had. It was worse than the 3 months because the 3 months I had a routine. I had a system. I was very busy in jail. I found a way to be busy all day, every day. I didn't have any spare time. There'd be days in jail I'd wake up and I'd start my things, whatever, and I'd check the time and be like, I'm late. Like I had things to do. If I had to go to court that morning and they messed up my schedule, I was in a very bad mood, especially when they rejected me. Like, why take me to court to reject me? Just let me do my things. So I think within 2 or 3 weeks, I had a schedule. I'd be up at around the same time and we'd get our hot water at a certain time and I'd begin my training at a certain time and there'd be a particular show on that I understood at a certain time, which would burn 30 minutes and I'd watch that. And then I'd do my other training after that and I'd have to do 1,000 push-ups a day and then I'd clean the toilet and then I'd sweep the whole floor and then we'd go for killing bugs. We had a system. This last day I was in jail, I was thrown in a cell with these 3 men I didn't know. And it was their room. It's like walking into someone else's house, right? It's their room. It's their system. It's their setup. They went to bed at 7 p.m., these people. They turned off the TV and hit the lights and everything. By 7 p.m., they went to sleep. My system, me and my brother would be up till 2, 3 in the morning. So 7 p.m., lights out, boom, quiet. These 3 guys are trying to sleep and you're just sitting there staring at the ceiling. So it was much worse to be thrusted into somebody else's ecosystem. But when I was in jail for the 3 months, after about a month, my brother and I had a pretty firm system set out. And hot water would come at a certain time and I'd get it on Mondays and he'd get it on Tuesdays because it was 6 a.m. and we'd sleep past that. So who'd have to get up to get the water and who made the coffee and the room was immaculate and how the cigarettes were stacked and how certain things went in certain places and who did the washing up. Within a month, we had a very system. I didn't have any spare time in jail. I was very busy, if that makes sense.
Did you have just enough floor space to do push-ups on?
Literally. I could literally do push-ups and maybe stick my arm out, but then I'd touch the wall. That was it. And I'd do 1,000 push-ups a day.
1,000. What other exercises did you do?
In sets of 50. I'd do 300. I started with 400, but I ended up, I admit, going down to 300 squats every single day. And then if there was a good TV show on, I would sit with 6 2-liter bottles of water, which is 12 kilos, around 28 pounds or something. And I'd sit and lift it over my head, back, forth, while watching TV on a little plastic chair. And then about a month and a half in, the leg to my plastic chair broke. Oh. And then, which was very upsetting. And there was no other chairs in the jail. So I got a bed sheet, and I made the sheet into kind of like a rope and put it around all 4 legs to keep it together and fix this chair. And that held out for about 4 days. And then someone killed themselves. So they bust into my cell and found the sheet and said, you're going to hang yourself. I said, no, I'm fixing my chair. So they took the sheet and left me with a 3-legged chair. So that kind of destroyed that. So from then on out, I had to do that exact exercise, but standing up. And I would just basically train all day. I would train all day and clean all day. And I guess you become pedantic about certain things because you have time. So, I'd pour coffee in a certain way, and I'd wait a few minutes, and I'd look at the cup and wait for it to cool down. And then I'd consciously enjoy the coffee as opposed to just vamoose it like you normally do, and consciously have a cigarette. You become more conscious. In the outside world, you have a cigarette while you're doing everything else. But in jail, you have a cigarette, you're having a cigarette. That's what you're doing. That's it.
So would you say then the things that you took for granted before that arrest, you started to develop a whole new appreciation of them because, like sleep, food, quality, these things, you lose them and you realize how good you had it?
Yes, but it's also amazing how ungrateful the human mind is. Because you soon slip back into not respecting it anymore. True or false?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but the day I got out, I walked down with this high street eating a banana like I was high on thinking I'm a free man. I can just eat a banana. Yeah. It didn't lasted a few months, but
and then it goes. It's like you get out of jail and you're like, I can do anything. And then a few months in, you're like, man. And it's amazing how ungrateful you are as a person, like inside of us, because hedonistic adaptation's a thing. And there were promises I made to myself in jail about phone usage and, certain things that you soon slip back into your normal habits of just being on your phone all the time and working all the time, etc.
So did yesterday top you up on